Hello everyone, my name is Brendan Schneider. Thank you so much for joining me and welcome to another episode of Best of the Box. So as part of my 11,000 CD collection, I have over 103 boxes like this behind me. It's called the banker style box. I have made a video on how to cut it down and to get it the right size to fit CDs. In fact, it holds 90 CDs in jewel cases, 90 CDs exactly. And when you add up or multiply the 103 times the 90, it gives you 9,270 CDs. Stored away in boxes like that, you can actually see a huge stack of them outside the doorway there, which is 48 boxes like that just in that stack. And a lot of people have asked questions like, how do I know where these things are? Well, the stacks themselves are by genre. And so each one of those rows of 12, because there's 4 of them, each one is a different genre. I've got an alternative stack, a heavy metal stack, glam metal, and just a sort of straight ahead rock or classic rock kind of stack like that. So they're all alphabetical in those stacks, and that's how I can find these things. But I've got lots of other different boxes floating around. And for this particular series here, I thought I would take a different one each time. I've got one right here, and we would go through with it. I would unbox the contents and tell you all about it. So before we dive into this particular box here, if you're new to my channel and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please click the button. Also leave a comment, hit like, all those things help support my channel. I would greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, by subscribing, you'll be able to stay up to date on all that's going on in the world of music. And of course, I say that a little tongue-in-cheek today because we're just going through my music collection, but it still should be a lot of fun. And so these boxes here come in a lot of different configurations, I should say. You know, I do ones that are whole artist collection, all of one genre type, as I mentioned, like having the stack of glam metal, latest purchases, collection by one record label, and just so many other types and so forth. In the past, we've had some that are just catch-all boxes, ones that are specifically glam metal, new wave of British heavy metal. I did one that had all box sets in it, bootlegs and rarities. The last one we did was compilation collections. So this one here is a box that is all new releases from 2021. So I like to keep out for a while those new releases where I can go to them for the latest and greatest by a particular band. I don't want to file them away just yet. I actually kind of usually leave them out for a couple of years before they get filed away into their actual section, because I'm a big fan of new material. So I go back to that a lot more than I go back to catalog releases. But as I mentioned, I've got this one here. Let me take the cover off of it and hold it up so you can see what I'm talking about today. So in this one here, we've actually got 100 different CDs that are in here, but that's because so many of these are in the digipack or the cardboard style cases, and so you can fit a lot more in here. So I put the box down because I need to be able to get to it a little easier for this video, which I'm going to be doing. But there you can see what that kind of box is. So I'm not holding the thing up the whole time in it. We've got 100 to go through, so let's dive right into this thing. And maybe you'll find some stuff in here you didn't know had come out last year in 2021. First one up was a big one, Mammoth WVH, so Wolfgang Van Halen. Fairly big in the sense that a lot of notoriety behind him, not only because he is the son of Eddie Van Halen, he was in Van Halen, but then he's done some other projects and things like Tremonti and whatnot. Now he has his own album, and I have to say I sort of steered clear of that for some time, but people kept bringing it up and talking about it. When I finally listened to it, I have to say I got to give that kid props because he certainly can play. Next one up, Heart guitarist Nancy Wilson. This one here was a surprise. A lot of covers on this one here, but really good. Wasn't expecting it to be as good as it is. Definitely worth checking out. Another one from the female side of the artist, Chrissie Hynde of the Pretenders, and she does Bob Dylan songs. There are 9 of them on here, kind of recorded live in the studio. It's got a lot of raw feel to it, just like it's live without audience and stuff like that. Alternative rocker Dave Gaughan and the Soul Savers here. This one was titled Imposter. It is a covers album. A lot of covers albums came out both 2020 but definitely 2021. A lot of artists just digging into that sort of genre when they couldn't get together and write with their respective bands. There's a lot of artists who made solo records of covers albums and things. In fact, 2020 and 2021 were some of the biggest amount of releases of those that I found. 2020, I even did a countdown of the best ones because there was just so many of them. Danny Elfman from Oingo Boingo, or formerly I should say, because they're not around anymore, he made a solo album and hadn't done one of those since the 1980s, so that was crazy. Doesn't really have that flavor though of Oingo Boingo. I was a little disappointed in it. I kept hoping to warm up to it, but maybe just because of the imagery or whatnot, it's kind of got a very creepy vibe to it. But you know, still it was good to get something from him, and hopefully it's going to grow on me in time. Crowded House put out a brand new album. I think really kind of due to the fact that the lead vocalist in the band is now part of Fleetwood Mac, but it was cool to get that and of course tie that in. And I'm really hoping Fleetwood Mac, along with Crowded House vocalist and Mike Campbell of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, actually record something, because that's really the way that I would like to hear these guys. Toad the Wet Sprocket put out a new album called Starting Now. So interesting release. I remember these guys from back in the day. Was enjoying that. Here was an interesting one. Andrew Ferris, formerly of INXS, put out a solo album. Definitely more in the country vein. That was due out over a couple year period that just didn't happen, kept getting pushed back, and ultimately finally got released there. But that's an interesting one. Sammy Yaffa, former member of Hanoi Rocks and multiple different projects with Michael Monroe, singer of Hanoi Rocks. Really good album if you like that sort of genre, you know, straight up rock, punk sort of rock sound sort of stuff like that. Great stuff there. Here's one that I didn't know about when it first came around, got it now, and really enjoyed too. It's actually a reissue. Devo's Jared Castle put out this, Jerry Jihad and the Evildoers, and it's been I think it came out under Jerry Jihad and the Evildoers, kind of ran under the radar, which is why a lot of people didn't know about it. It's now been reissued as Devo's Jared Castle. So now, of course, that came to my attention and picked that up. Really good. If you like Devo, do check that out. Steve Lukather put out a solo album along with current vocalist in Toto, Joseph Williams. So really good stuff. These guys, it's basically a double Toto album because you've got each guy guesting on the other album along with other Toto members. And so together, it's like having a double Toto album. Now Toto's back together with a different version, although I think they've said they have no intention of recording an album ever again. It's just a touring thing, but of course we'll wait and see. Resurrection Kings, great little band here that has Chaz West in it, coming from Jason Bonham band, and let's see who else, Craig Goldie, Vinny Appice, and then you got Alessandro Del Vecchio, who seems to be everywhere on any Frontiers Records label release. That guy is around doing something, and good or bad, it's great that he's there and he's pushing this stuff along. Former new wave of British heavy metal band Touch, who only put out one album back in 1981, put this one out 40 years later, no albums in between. So kind of cool. Mark Mangold, keyboardist in the band. Michael Sweet put this out called Reborn Again. So if you remember the Stryper album that was called Born Again, that was actually intended to be a Michael Sweet solo album. They reformed the band. He brought in some of that material. They liked it, so they ended up turning what was a solo album into a Stryper album. This here, the original demos finished off as complete songs. So we went back into the studio, took the solo material, and completed it. So different vibe to it. Very cool. Tigers of Pantang, Majors and Minor. It is a compilation of the newer material. So it doesn't have the classic hits on it, which is fine by me. I've been really enjoying the latest lineup, and I think it clicks together like the last 3 or 4 albums kind of a thing. Ricky Warwick from Almighty, but also from Black Star Riders, and of course he was part of the Thin Lizzy reunion band that was going around at the time before Black Star Riders reformed. Solo album from him, much in the vein of that, but very good. This one here was a good one that sort of caught me off guard. Jason Beeler, which is the guitarist and singer for Saigon Kick, putting out a solo album there. Not really in the vein of Saigon Kick, but just great to have something from him. He's actually done quite a bit, but only released it digitally. A number of solo albums and things out there, but finally getting something physical released. Sepultura, I should say. And this was something they did during the pandemic. They basically did a weekly show that invited guests in to play songs they couldn't tour, and then they collected up, let's see, 15 of those and released them here. So a lot of great guests on those, Scott Ian guesting and other cool people like that. Todd LaTorre made a solo album, and this one here, much heavier than or modern, I should say, more modern metal than Queensryche, but good stuff. His vocals just work on everything. Michael Schenker, I know people always get me on that. It's just my Florida accent that comes out sometimes that I pronounce it that way. Immortal. This was cool because this one here actually had Jolyn Turner singing on. At least one, if not a couple more on here, but he had 3 different vocalists on that one. And that was technically a Michael Schenker group album, first one in quite some time. But I would have liked it better, I think, if it had just had one vocalist, being more like a band, a group, than having 3 vocalists on it. Except Too Mean to Die. This one here, very, very good. I really liked this album, and can't say enough about that. In fact, out of the reunion era albums, that one is my favorite and definitely worth checking out. I've got, I think they've done 4 now. Flotsam and Jetsam, Blood in the Water, another really good one from these guys. Didn't gel with me as much as I had hoped it would. I'm a big Flotsam and Jetsam fan. Some of their newer albums have just been outstanding. This one here, not that it's not, it just didn't grab me in that same way. But that is why I always keep things. I don't ever get rid of these anymore. I've learned a long time ago. Put it aside. At some point, I will be deep into Flotsam and Jetsam, and I'll pull that out, and it'll just blow me away at that time. But hasn't yet at this point. Dirk Schneider and the Old Gang. So this was cool. He got 2 of the guys, Peter Boltz and Stefan Kaufmann, if I believe. Yes, so he got 2 other guys from Accept. So that's why it's Dirk Schneider, Udo Dirk Schneider, and the Old Gang. 3 guys from Accept in here doing this. They did a 3-song EP. So good. So wish it was longer and a full-length album. He's already moved on and done 2 Udo records, which in fact I'll pull that out next instead. So he did make an Udo album, this one here, which is called Game Over. 16 tracks, man. He is always loading these things up, but he's now since getting ready to put out a new one on his birthday, celebrating, forget what age he's celebrating, but he's up there. So he's celebrating a milestone and putting out a special album. Exodus, Persona Non Grata. This one here too, same sort of thing like the Flotsam and Jetsam. Got it. It's a good record. It just didn't grab me. And I don't mean to sound negative about any of these things. It really has to do with what I'm listening to at the time, and sometimes the albums don't always fit my mood. So I put them aside. I actually was in a thrash mood a few weeks back as part of my What's That You're Listening To episode. You guys saw that. So I did pull that out at that time, and it fit much better. But I'm sort of waiting for the thing to really grab me. It had been 6 or 7 years, I think, since the last one, so a long time in between. Black Label Society, Doom Crew Incorporated. This one here did click with me, and I very much like it. First single that came off of that has a crazy video for it. It's really cool. Should check it out. Doug Pinnick put out a solo album while we wait for the brand new King's X album. 13 tracks on this one here. Interesting just that King's X has completed their new album. They haven't put it out, but yet we've got 2 albums from Ty Tabor, one here from Doug Pinnick, along with like Grinder Blues and some other projects that he's done. And still we're waiting on that King's X album, but I guess we've got these side projects to tide us over. George Lynch, Seamless, first ever complete instrumental album. Had high hopes for that. Didn't really do what I wanted it to do. The instrumentals that he did on his debut solo album, Sacred Groove, so much better than this. That fit much more in the Doc and Lynch Mob vein. This here is just Shredfest Central, which I know a lot of you will enjoy, but it didn't really feel like it had a lot of the melody and everything that those others had. So that's kind of unfortunate that it didn't really produce what I had hoped it would. The In Machine, another George Lynch project here. This is essentially Dokken without Don Dokken. Got current singer from Warrant singing for them, which was also a singer from Lynch Mob's second album. So Good stuff. I actually really enjoyed this. Again, so here's an interesting thing. This one came out under the radar for me in the sense that didn't really gel with it, got it, put it away, was kind of bummed by it. Short time later, pulled it out, listened to it, and it blew my mind. Now, can't get enough of that album. Really, really enjoying it. So, see, it's just all in the mood that you're in sometimes. Sweet Oblivion featuring Jeff Tate, some of his best work post Queensryche, that both of those albums. But then again, they're project related albums. They're not really bands. It's the things that Frontiers Records puts together. I'd really like Jeff Tate to either get back to doing solo material officially or form a band, but he really just kind of seems to be on the kick of performing Queensryche stuff. Robin McAuley solo album. This is actually only a second solo album in his really long career. Standing on the Edge. This one here has been a grower for me. It's one that didn't really connect with me when it came out, but I've been slowly growing into it because I'm a big fan of both Macaulay Schenker, but his latest work with Black Swan. And they've got a second album coming out. Cannot wait for that. Joel Hoekstra's 13, second album from this group here. Of course, Joel Hoekstra being in Whitesnake, so that's cool. All right, let's jump into some others that are here. This one here, Bob Dylan's Springtime in New York City, a 2 CD set from 1980 to 85. Bunch of cool rarities and things like that. Then we've got Billy Idol, Roadside EP. Very good stuff. Only 4 tracks, but he has completed the second one, so cannot wait for that. Steve Stevens on those. Can't go wrong when you got Steve Stevens and Billy Idol. Brand new, Neil Young and Crazy Horse, simply called Barn. This one here, a surprise. It was better than expected. I wasn't too big a fan of Colorado. The last one's a little too mellow for me. This one here, while still having a bunch of those mellow tracks, equally offset them with the harder, heavier tracks that we know Crazy Horse for. And so that one turned out to be really good. Ken Hensley, My Book of Answers. Great album here. I think this was the final album that he had been working on prior to his death and finally came out. 9 tracks on it with a bonus 10th track added to this thing here. And then we've got McCartney 3 Imagine. So this took his album 3, which is a great album. And then essentially it gave it out to people and let them remix it and do whatever they wanted with it. They could keep his vocals, they could keep the music, they could redo the music, whatever they wanted to do. For the most part, it still sounds like a McCartney album, so I've enjoyed it. Some of the stuff is a little too modernized for me, but it was interesting and just a nice way to get something else out during this pandemic and lockdown and things of that nature. Green Day BBC Sessions. Didn't have very high hopes for this thing here. 4 different sessions from 94, 96, 98, and 2001. So live in the studio, that's what the BBC is. And turned out this thing was really great. The energy is just very effervescent in this thing. Next up, Kiss, Off the Soundboard, recording from 2001. Cool thing, this one featured Ace Frehley along with Eric Singer in the lineup. A very rare, short-lived period of the band. Another Kiss-related thing, Destroyer, the 2-disc special edition of this. I also have the 4 CD box set of this thing. And then we got one that we totally were never expecting. 40 years after the band released their last album, Abba Voyage. So this one here I think is pretty typical to their album releases, as I came to find out, but I really like those higher energy dance disco beats, and there just wasn't a lot on that one. But people tell me this album and the way that it is with those slower ballad songs is what they're known for. So I think it was a big hit for a lot of people, just not really for me. Goo Goo Dolls Rarities. This one was an interesting one. So I don't actually know how many tracks because it doesn't put the number next to it. But a lot of different stuff. Remixes, live acoustic, and then just B-sides and things of that nature on there. All right, Colin Hay from Men at Work. This one here's got a long title. I just don't know what to do with myself. Perfect title for the pandemic era. He didn't know what to do with himself, so he recorded a bunch of songs like that and put them out. Then we've got a Robert Plant 2 CD compilation of his solo work. And then we've got Ray Wilson. This one here being a brand new solo album from the former Genesis vocalist. I got some I call them glam metal bands. I know some of you guys would argue with it, motorcycle rock or whatever. Circus of Power, 6-song EP that they put out digitally only during the lockdown, and finally came out with a CD version of it. Then we get the Electric Boys, which is called Upside Down. I don't know if they're Stranger Things fans or not, but this one came out. Good stuff. These guys still sound great, very much in that late 80s, early 90s sound and what they're doing. Buck Cherry, Hellbound, really cool one here. We've got Billy Rowe on guitar coming from, oh gee, I'm totally spacing on the name now. It'll come to me in a bit, but good stuff there. One of the 80s bands, this guy coming forward and joining up with now in Buck Cherry, so very cool. Jackson Browne, this one here, very good stuff. Downhill from Everywhere. I hadn't been too into his last couple albums, pretty mellow. This one here brought back that sort of melodic rock style that he was known for from the 80s. So really glad to have that. Okay, Rod Stewart, Tears of Hercules. This one here was first single release. It had sort of a country vibe to it. I thought that's what the rest of the album would be. Turns out the album has a little bit of every different style on it. So it's kind of a bummer in the sense that it wasn't what I had hoped for. He had an album out a few years back called Another Country that was really good. I was kind of hoping he had made a return to that. Not so much on it. Dinosaur Jr. This one here, Sweep It Into, I can't read it because it's handwritten. Sweep It Into Spare, maybe. All right, good album. Just look for one that has this picture on it if you're a fan of Dinosaur Jr. Jay Mascis, unsung hero of the alternative rock era. Sponge, another one. Lavatorium, those guys, remember them, the song 16 Candles, Molly, good stuff. And The Offspring, Let the Good Times Roll, or Let the Bad Times Roll. Always tongue-in-cheek with these guys. This one here, I know I say this a lot recently with what I'm talking about here, but a lot of these bands I hadn't been into some of the releases from previous years, and I don't know what the sort of resurgence has been. But I think in the last couple of years, a lot of those great bands from the 80s, 90s have really kind of made return to form albums, and I've been so much more into those than the in-between stuff when they were trying their hand at different styles and things of that nature. So I don't know what it is, but it just kind of goes to show you that if these bands had really stuck to what it was that had made their name originally, they'd probably be a lot more successful today than when they had tried to veer off and be modern and everything. All right, this one here, Monster Magnet, covers album. This is one of those ones I was talking about. Bands coming out doing covers albums and whatnot. That was some really obscure psychedelic stuff from the 70s. So not really going to recognize it. So it really sounded like you were listening to a new Monster Magnet album. Tomahawk, featuring Mike Patton of Faith No More, as well as I think Dwayne Dennison. I think he's from the Melvins. It's a little super group in the alternative rock world, but I really follow it for Mike Patton, and just good stuff. If you like Faith No More and you can't get enough Faith No More, do try Tomahawk. Chris Cornell, his covers album. So No One Sings Like You Anymore, Volume 1. Supposed to get another volume in here, hopefully this year. This one here, some really good stuff, including Patience. Guns N' Roses cover on here. Nothing Compares to You. Some of the good stuff that was on here was like Sad Sad City. And I don't remember who does it because he didn't do some outright big covers that you would have expected. He did some that kind of ran under the radar. Mark Stein, There's a Light, keyboardist for Vanilla Fudge. Good album there. They call that his first one, but it's not true. It is his second album, so ignore the press releases on that. Axel Rudy Pell, Diamonds Unlocked 2. A lot of you guys I've introduced to this guitarist. Amazing guy. It's got the vocalist from Hardline, Johnny Gioli, singing for them. So if you remember Hardline and you like that, check this out. This guy is a guitar whiz. That's a covers album there, but he just does very interesting covers. Ringo Starr, Change the World, 4-song EP, as well as Zoom In. So we got 2 of them last year, which was kind of cool. You know, almost like having an album from him, album length stuff. And I think he's making a 3rd one, he said. Saga, Symmetry. So this one here was cool. I think this is all acoustic songs. Very interesting. Arc of Life. I got 2 of the key guys Jeff Downes and the lead vocalist, John Davison from Yes, in here doing their stuff. Or sorry, not Jeff Downes. Billy Sherwood and John Davison. Get my guys in Yes mixed up sometimes. But that came out before the Yes album. And since we're on Yes, I'm going to go ahead and pull that one out. The Quest. So this came out early on, sort of whetting all our appetites, and then there was a big debate which one was actually a, quote, better Yes album. And at the end of the day, I have to say it's this. This one here, good, whetted my appetite, but tended to be a little less memorable than this. Although a lot of people didn't care for this. It was more mellow than what a lot of people had expected from them. Still, I liked it very much. Transatlantic, a cool little super group. This one here, Forevermore, the extended edition, 2 CD. There was a single disc edition of that came out where they edited down the tracks. That was a cool thing to get, 2-disc version or single disc, whichever one you wanted. I bought both because there were different mixes of songs and edits of songs between the two. Liquid Tension Experiment 3. Glad to finally get that thing there. Another Dream Theater offshoot project, just like Transatlantic. And now we get into some of the bigger releases like that Yes one there, the ones that really topped my list. All right, so Rolling Stones Tattoo You. This one here, a 40th anniversary edition of the album. 2 CD edition, having the bonus disc on it of unreleased material. Talk about those covers albums. Deep Purple, Turning to Crime, 12 cover songs. Had a lot higher hopes for this, in my opinion. They didn't really Deep Purpleize a number of the tracks. The singles that came out, fantastic, and then the rest of the tracks sort of just followed along as to what those songs were from the original artist. So it kind of just, it was great when it came out, but probably not something I'm going to return to all that often. Doobie Brothers reunion album, Liberté. Now, I know the band hasn't broken up or whatever, but I think it's been a decade since they've done anything, so that was cool. This one here, very, very good. Sting, brand new album, The Bridge. Opening track off of this one, Rushing Water. Oh, so good. Check that one out if you passed that one up when it originally came out. All right, then we've got Duran, Future Past. This one here, limited edition, featuring 3 bonus tracks here on it. Can't say enough good stuff about that one either. The recent output from Duran is very good. Here was a really big one from last year. Topped a lot of people's best albums of 2021. For me, not so much. Great album, just not best of 2021. Iron Maiden Sinjitsu double album. This one here, a lot of the songs sort of forgettable on it, and other ones very good, but not really that galloping style that we know them for. So not as many peaks and valleys in that album as I had hoped for. This next one, though, very, very good. KK's Priest, Sermons of the Center. This one here, I know a lot of you guys don't agree with me. I think it's better than the last 2 Judas Priest albums. I wish KK would be let back into the band, but it is what it is, right? Okay, so we've got Queen drummer here, Roger Taylor, Outsider. Good album. Glad to see him doing something solo. I do wish Queen would put out a new studio album, but I don't know if that's ever going to happen. We got a live album, which was pretty cool. All right, Jerry Cantrell put out a brand new solo album, and this one here just so good. I wasn't expecting much. I had to order this off of his website. Wasn't available through Amazon. Don't know if it's suddenly become available through Amazon, but if you can get a hold of that, do pick it up. Very, very good. It's got a little bit of everything from the Alice in Chains sound that he does. Jack Russell's Great White, Great Zeppelin 2, follow up to the original Great Zeppelin from I think 95, 96 era of Great White. So these are mostly different songs. I think a couple repeat on here, although it's funny because it was advertised as saying none of the songs repeat, but I think somebody pointed out to me that 1 or 2 of those do. The Dead Daisies, this one here, Holy Ground, very high on my top 2021 list of albums. Glenn Hughes doing it the right way. Alice Cooper, another great one here. Detroit Stories. He's working on a brand new album, so we've got that coming down the line. Miles Kennedy's second solo album. shocked me how great a guitar player he is. That was not made apparent on his last solo album. So when I got that, I didn't know that he even played guitar. Put that in, listening to it, was blown away, said, gee, I gotta look up who this guitar player is. Turned out it was Miles Kennedy. So very cool, learned something new with that. Billy Gibbons, Hardware. ZZ Top is working on a brand new album. This is the most ZZ Top sounding of his solo releases, in my opinion. He's got 3 of them. So if you're looking for a little ZZ Top Tide Me Over, check that one out. Blaze Bayley, War Within Me. This one here, #1 metal album from last year. So good. I can't say enough great stuff about Blaze Bayley. I know a lot of you guys didn't like him while he was in Iron Maiden, but I think he's amazing. Halloween Reunion album. The band's got 3 vocalists, 3 guitarists, you know, multiple lineups, all back together. Can't go wrong with that. Brand new Dream Theater album came out as well. Very good stuff from them. They're one of those ones that when they couldn't tour, went into the studio to record. So we ended up getting another album in short succession. I really liked that. As far as all the bad stuff from the pandemic, getting brand new albums like that, very cool. Lindsey Buckingham, no longer in Fleetwood Mac. We got, in my opinion, his best ever solo album. Candlebox made a new one, Wolves. This one here, very good. This was unexpected. Neil Sean, Universe, solo album, 15 tracks. He only wrote a few of these. He actually gave it to his drummer and said, write me an album. Then he came in and played on it. Website only release, digitally available for it, but not something you could just go buy in stores. This was a cool one because it came out for Record Store Day first on vinyl, then eventually it got a CD release. It's a redo of the She's the One soundtrack, sorry, Tom Petty. She's the One soundtrack, now being called Angel Dream. Got a new mix, got a new running order, dropped some songs, added some songs, so it was like getting a brand new Tom Petty album. Thunder put out a really great album here. This one called All the Right Noises. These guys have just been on fire lately with how great they are, and they've got a brand new album getting ready to come out. So that's kind of cool. Just these bands churning out some stuff, again, in short succession. #1 album of 2021 overall went to Styx for me. This one here, Crash of the Crown. 15 tracks, very interestingly done. It was basically like they took as many different song parts as they could, crammed it into one track for all of the different tracks, so it just has all of this interesting sort of theatrics throughout the entire album. Sounds like a concept album the way it's being played, but in fact, it's not. There's no storyline being told or anything like that, but the songs work so well together that it feels like that when you're listening to it. Another great one, Dynasty Young, 26 East Volume 2. Of course, those albums go hand in hand, but I ended up going with Styx as the better album in that. Night Ranger and the band played on 12 tracks here. These guys too doing some of their best material in their entire career lately. Enough's Enough put out a covers album, Hard Rock Night. A lot of Beatles-esque sort of stuff, or in fact, I think everything that's on here is Beatles and Beatles solo. So that was a nice little vibe going on there. You can see they got the Apple from Apple Records on the back side. Hookers and Blow, this one here, another covers album. As I mentioned, just tons of covers albums coming out. And this one is Dizzy Reed of Guns N' Roses, his little side project. And the Hookers and Blow, that's what they do covers. So that makes sense that that would be the first album they put out. But Dizzy Reed, man, can't say enough great stuff about him. His solo album, Rock and Roll Ain't Easy, so very good. Another GNR guy, Gilby Clarke, or former I should say, The Gospel Truth. Want some good straight up rock and roll? Check that out. A lot of you guys love these. Former Guns N' Roses member from way early on, LA Guns, of course Tracy Guns we're talking about, giving Guns N' Roses their guns in the name. Good album. Different, varied pace than past albums, so that was a refreshing new LA Guns album. Alcatraz 5 without Graham Bonnet. If you want to know what Alcatraz sounds like without Graham Bonnet, check that out. It's got Doogie White singing for them. Rough Cut 3. A lot of people didn't know this came out. It kind of dropped without any warning and just really ran under the radar. It does have Paul Shortino, Matt Thorne, and Amir Durak from the original lineup still in the band. All right, we got a Paul Gilbert instrumental album, Werewolves of Portland. That was a surprise and very good. Steve Whitman, you're welcome, lead vocalist for Kix, doing his first ever solo album, web-only release. Can't stream that anywhere as far as I know, at least at the time. Here was another very, very high charting album for me, Cheap Trick, In Another World. Absolutely loved this. Great, great comeback album for these guys. And the final one, Smith Kotzen, debut album from these two guys, Richie Kotzen and Adrian Smith. Richie Kotzen, former Poison guitar player, and of course Adrian Smith coming from Iron Maiden. So you wouldn't think that that pairing would work, but it actually did. All right, and there you go. Best of the Box, this particular episode covering a bunch of new releases from 2021. Hopefully you found maybe some stuff that ran under the radar for you, and you can go and check that stuff out. And if nothing else, maybe it just reminded you of some stuff you got and you haven't listened to it in a while since it came out, and you can go back to it. All right, everyone, take care, have a great day, and I'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye, everyone.